You are live on 98.9 Northwest FM. This is the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan. Joined by James. How you going, James? What's something's made you happy in the last week?
On the weekend, made some spaghetti and meatballs, so that was good.
Yeah,
Nice,
good.
tasty.
You were telling me about those meatballs. Were they good?
Yeah.
Describe them to me. Never mind. We'll move on.
Trying to keep it PG.
Succulent Italian meal?
Yeah.
That's it.
Also moist.
Also joined by Callum. What's something's made you happy in the last week, Callum?
A couple of things. Shangri-La Frontier, the anime. I have recently got back into it. Very enjoyable. Just an anime. I'm sorry that's how immature of me to,
No. We never ended up getting around to talking about solo leveling. We never got around to... talking about solo leveling.
Maybe next time we get an opportunity. The other thing that made me happy is an upcoming event, going to see the Call of Cthulhu silent movie at the Sun Theatre. That'll be fun. And as well as the potential to attend an advanced screening of Together with David Franco and
Alison Brie.
So yeah.
As for me, something's made me happy in the last week. James is going to laugh, but the trailer for Netflix's Old Guard 2 came out.
Oh my god!
And I like the first movie.
That
and
is
it's been
such
yeah, I know.
Nathan.
Yeah, I know.
Straight to streaming slop.
I know. Slop me up. Let's go. But the first one came out 5 years ago.
Wow,
basically.
it's been that long.
Yeah, it's been that long, and they were always like, "Yeah, there'll be a second one eventually." And then I just thought it was dead in the water.
I just assumed they...
it's coming out in 2nd of July. Very good.
Well,
good on him.
There you go. So that made me
fair
happy.
enough.
Hopefully it resolves the story, and then I don't have to wait another 5 years.
The first one was enough for me. I'm like, nope, I'm not watching any more of that. So we are going to Chaosium Con this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is the 27th, 28th, and 29th of June. So if you're in Melbourne, you want to go down to this cool tabletop, fantasy convention, come say hi. Yeah,
we'll be there all 3 days.
Yeah.
Nerding out.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't disrupt us at a tabletop game. If you're one of our many fans, just wait for the game to finish.
That's a likely
We'll take it seriously.
Yeah. There's all these people waiting for our autograph.
It's
paparazzi.
For us, it's going to be interesting because it is a convention based around tabletop, right? So it's kind of just like, I guess, getting permission to film and...
Well, I'm assuming there's like a cosplay element.
Yeah, there'll be enough for us to do, but it's kind of just like, it's going to be interesting.
Anyway, we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah. Anyway, this week we're talking about the biggest new movie on our radar. Anyway, 28 Years Later.
Hell yeah!
The third in the franchise by Danny Boyle.
Before we get started, Sinners or 28 Years Later? Go.
28 years.
Okay. There's been some conversation online about which is the superior film.
Sinners is
28 years later clears it. I'm sorry.
Sinners is good, and it is very good, but it's also hyped. Infinitely hyped.
Yeah.
And people put it on a pedestal, kind of like Nope was. Where Nope was good, but it had that kind of life-changing, this is an amazing movie, the best ever done it kind of attitude. That Sinners kind of has as well.
I think Nope's better than Sinners. But I think that Sinners is really great, but Sinners is ultimately just a popcorn movie. It's like no, I know how harsh that sounds. I don't mean it in a negative way. Where I'm like 28 years later is like a vision.
No, I think Sinners is a vision. It's just there are parts of Sinners, especially at the end, that I think fell flat. But the movie itself is really good, and there are parts in that movie where I'm like, yes, this is cinema.
Yeah.
But 28 years later, as we'll discuss, the whole thing from start to finish is just like, holy crap, yes.
It's solid gold, Jerry.
We'll be having this conversation in August, and we're like, so James, weapons or 28 years later?
That's, I mean, that's the thing. I mean...
Also, they're very different. They're
different. Like, Sinners and 28 years later, weapons will be different. Like, they're all different.
I think, and we'll go into it in depth later in a spoilers section, but I think 28 Years Later probably so far is my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah.
Only because it manages to balance a lot of different tones throughout the film that don't feel jarring. There's a lot of different kind of moods and vibes in this movie that don't feel like they clash.
And it takes bold swings, which even if you don't like it, like you got to appreciate it because movies now are so boring and safe. So anytime there's something that goes a bit outside the box.
So let's set up some context here for this discussion.
Yeah. Let's start. Can we talk about the first two movies?
Yes. Yeah, let's do it. So the first film is a creative vision, is one word for it.
28 Days Later is, I wouldn't even say a cult classic. It's probably a classic.
Yeah, I've seen it referred to as cult, and I'm like, it's just great. It was massively popular. How can it be considered a cult?
Yeah, I mean,
I think that the problem, especially looking at it retroactively, far removed from the time of its release, is its technical limitations, in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean...
So people consider it quaint and a cult classic now, but back then, it was revelation. Yeah,
but I mean, I think... So the thing with 28 Days Later is that, it was shot on, like, mini DV...
It was shot
480p.
480p SDR.
Yeah.
Very
SD,
expensive handheld camera. Yeah.
Consumer grade handy cams, which, at the time were kind of brand spanking new in the early 2000s, and afforded Danny Boyle and the crew to shoot,
unconventional angles, sets,
really weird close-ups, and like out on the streets of London, to make it look like it's abandoned.
So like that, they only had 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So when Cillian Murphy's character Jim is crossing from leaving the hospital through London, that whole section, they only had 2 minutes to shoot all that footage.
Yeah, they just got a whole bunch of different cameras.
Yeah, whole bunch of these different handy cams, and they shot it all at once, and he's just walking.
Which is, I mean...
Insane. Insane that they worked.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's one of the reasons and most memorable parts of the original film, and it's one of the reasons it is probably so special. But I think just saying, like, just the way it was shot, like, that's not the only thing that makes it good.
No, the writing, it's almost like a comic book movie.
A little bit.
Like, it has those kinds of vibes. Like, they're running up the stairwell at, like, the apartment building. And there's the guy in the police, and he's got the shield, and he's got the baton. And it's very kind of almost like a comic book Walking Dead kind of...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a zombie movie in the zombie movie tradition of, George Romero being the king of that. But obviously they're not zombies, they're rage virus-infected humans, but whatever, it's a zombie movie. But yeah, so, it's one of the great zombie movies, just one of the great horror movies, and just a really interesting look into, like, the 21st turn of the 21st century, and Danny Boyle being innovative and making a movie in an unconventional way. But yeah, obviously all these years later, now that we all have 4K TVs, not only in our homes, but like 4K screens on our phones in our pockets, and everyone walks around with them, like, it is... the quality drop is noticeable, but I think that's taking away from how strong a movie that is. One, the camera work and actual cinematography and lighting is great. It's just the fidelity is low.
Yeah.
Also...
Yeah, the cinematography in this movie is insane.
Yeah, in 28 Days. Yeah. So, like, I mean, you can show it to someone, they go, oh, well, it looks like crap, but it's a beautiful looking movie.
Yeah.
Also skill issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's people, It also, again, it comes down to media literacy and stuff that we talk about.
It's still watchable.
But also, one of the reasons it is so good is because characters are great, performances are great, the kind of gore effects and special effects are all great. All the, the locations, the post-apocalypticness of it all, and, the way the story unfolds and the journey they go on.
Even the way this movie, 28 Days Later, uses color. Like, in the city and everywhere else, it's muted and kind of dark and depressing. And then
go in the country, it's all green and
even when they're in a safe space, there's more vibrancy to the colors, right? They're in the apartment and it's full of colored lights. And they go into the supermarket and it's full of colorful produce and it's a safe moment.
And the soundtrack and the score, like most Danny Boyle's, is just so great. So it is a classic. It is one of the great horror zombie movies. It's also maybe just one of the great 21st century movies.
One of the things that I like about 28 Days Later, to a lesser degree 28 Weeks Later, is that they're also just intensely vibing films. The aura of specifically 28 Days Later has an evil energy that radiates from it. You watch it, straight away there's tension. And that tension doesn't end until the credits are rolling.
Yeah, and that the style in which it's shot
adds to the aura.
Like all those Dutch angles.
But that dark, that sort of,
it's a sense
that
of
sort
dread.
of grainy, that sort of grainy 480p footage adds to the,
I mean, especially at the time,
quote unquote realism, groundedness, and the sense of horror that's going on. And at the end of the movie, when it opens up and it becomes 35 millimeter, it's like you can finally breathe.
Yeah.
You know, and the character's like, oh my God, like it's this weight's lifted. The cloud has.
Yeah. Especially at the time when you consider the fact that what the cameras they're using are the same cameras people use, obviously more expensive version, but the same cameras people use for their home videos. So people would have been extra freaked out because it looks the same as what My Holiday looks like.
But it's not shot as a mockumentary or found footage or in a...
There's still that essence of... Yeah,
it's just
like it doesn't look like a movie.
The fidelity, the tangibility of the grain, like that's what makes it look like...
Looks more real, you know, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it definitely at the end when that contrast, when all of a sudden it's like you're in a different world.
What were you going to say?
I was going to talk about the sense of dread also being a result of the interpretation of zombies in this film. Because like most zombie movies, they just eat people. You know, they kind of walk slowly.
That's the other thing. Fast zombies before 28 Days Later, I don't think fast zombies were really a thing.
Don't quote me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's probably some 70s Italian horror movie where I've seen it done in a way, but I can't remember the name of it.
And not this ferocious.
Had that campness that they kind of had back then.
Yeah.
But what makes this movie so interesting is it's not just like they don't eat people in this film. You know what I mean? Like, but what they do...
They
spit a lot of blood.
What I was going to say is what makes the movie so dangerous, if I want to use that word, because the film, when I watch it, it's a dangerous feeling movie to watch, is that they attack. Yeah. They kill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they look awful.
Rage, they're infected with rage, so it's not that they're not just zombies who are like, brains. They're like, I want to destroy everything in my path. Like, there's no other emotion or logic. It's just pure rage.
Yeah. And like when you see that on screen, they're chasing people, not walking. Yeah. And they're chasing people with a purpose. They're not dumb either.
Yeah, and they'll tear you apart if
they'll navigate obstacles to get to you. Yeah. Which is the scary thing. Like, because normally zombies are, you know, you put something in the way. Yeah, they can't climb. They're like, I guess I can't get you now. Yeah. Whereas these guys there's a kind of momentum behind them and an intelligence.
Yeah, and an animalistic, berserker rage. I mean that's the thing is like it was innovative in that way too because before 28 Days Later I was like
zombies were kind of not passive's the wrong word but zombies were kind of, it was like a joke, just run away, get in a car, it'll be fine. But like with these ones there's a little more risk.
The runner zombies are always the most scary of the zombies,
especially as a fat boy.
Before we move on to 28 Weeks Later, just quickly, we talked about this off air. My only concern with this movie going forward is how they're going to present it to the 4K. Public. Yeah. So I think they're releasing it on 4K, and I was talking to James about this off the air, and I literally don't know what they're going to do because how you have two options. You use modern technology to clean it up and make it look better, which compromises Danny Boyle's artistic vision. Or you leave it as it is, but then if you leave it as it is, you may as well just watch the Blu-ray because then you're still watching it on the same format. Yeah. So if there's no edit information to the file, like I would imagine there's enough information on the Blu-ray disc that you're not going to get anything else on the 4K.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, even if you still had the original footage from when they shot it,
it's not going to be as big as the Blu-ray disc.
There's nothing. There's nothing there that they can recover. It's not like a film. A frame of film that's like, you know, if you scan it at a high resolution, you can get all that image out of it. It's not like that. Like, there's nothing else to get out of it. So
I'm concerned that people are going to be very disappointed, or I don't even know why they're doing it at all. Just release 28 Weeks Later and 28 Days Later in a package, but why bother with a 4K disc for this movie? I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean...
Unless they're selling Danny Boyle down the river. and they'll be like,
I mean, who knows if he
Does
was
he own
if
the
he's
rights to it?
involved
Yeah.
if he's involved with the restoration. Who knows if they're just going to
restoration.
well, you know, if they're it's probably just going to be a crappy AI upscale.
But then again, then I would tell people, don't watch it. Go watch the Blu-ray.
HDR wouldn't be a thing because
it was filmed with SDR. There's no high dynamic range to work with.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see when that comes out.
It's just I'm a bit concerned about it, but it'll be interesting to see exactly how it kind of is handled.
And after that, we had 28 weeks. Later.
So 28 days later came out in 2002. Then and that was directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland. And then a little while later, they did a sequel, 28 Weeks Later, which came out in 2007, which who was the director? Can you get his name up?
28 Weeks Later?
Yeah, it was, I think, a South American or Spanish director. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, I think, were... like producers, and I think
I've read they were involved in the opening scene, and that's it.
Yeah, Danny Boyle shot some of the opening scene in the barn when the old man gets turned.
It was directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo.
Yeah, and who was it written by?
It was who co-wrote the screenplay with Rowan Joffe, Enrique Lopez Levine, and Jesus Olmo.
Yeah, so... Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, I think, were not super involved. I think they were producers. They sort of had some input, some notes. But other than that, like, they picked these South American or Spanish, I forget, I'm sorry, directors and writers to take over and do a sequel to 28 Days Later, which is more of a bigger sort of American action movie.
Yeah.
Whereas the first movie is that sort of grittier...
indie horror,
like very British kind of grounded kind of horror movie. Yeah. The second one, is more like a horror thriller action.
Yeah,
it's still in England, but it's like... it's more running and shooting and whatever.
It does a lot of world building. So it's like it doesn't really get into horror territory until at least halfway through.
Well, the opening scene is god tier.
Yeah.
That scene alone is one of the best scenes of any horror movie ever.
Yeah.
And that's a straight horror scene, and that's something you could see in the first movie.
Yeah.
Where they're in the house, and then you set up the characters, and then they get overrun by the infected, and he's running, and it's like crazy awesome. And then it becomes more, about after the
rebuild,
the plague has been wiped out, and they're like rebuilding and repopulating London. But then there's another outbreak. And the US military, who's come in to oversee the repopulation and the rebuild, now has lost control, and now it's all chaos. And so they're just shooting and whatever. And it abandons the sort of SD and it shoots it more traditionally, which isn't a terrible thing. I think the movie's fine.
Look, it's unfairly maligned.
Yeah, but the thing is that people hate this movie. Like, hate it. And as someone who loves the first movie and just said it might be one of the best movies of the 21st century and one of the best horror movies, I think 28 Weeks Later is a good movie. And it's fun. And I've always really liked it.
Yeah.
It's not... the characters aren't as strong as the first movie. They're a bit one-dimensional. But you sort of care about them enough. And also, not only is the opening scene obviously the best part, but all this, it's a string of good action set pieces after that. Yeah. There's like the sniper bit, then there's the gas bit, the helicopter. Like there's like cool stuff that goes on throughout.
And also Robert Carlyle delivers
one
hell of a performance.
So freaking good.
I remember watching it and I said to Nathan, I actually sent him a little image of it as well. There's a scene, spoilers, I guess, for 28 Weeks Later, where Robert Carlyle gets infected.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where his son sees him standing at the door at a doorway.
Yeah.
And he's looking at the sun, and then his face crumples up and he snarls.
Yeah.
And it's like the most intense depiction of the rage virus that I've ever seen. because it's not just that he's angry. It's you actually see it's not just the zombie. You actually see the emotion of being mad on his face, and it's also visceral.
Yeah, in the first movie, the rage zombies are just pure rage. This one,
they're kind of anonymous in the first one, where it's like just like bodies.
This one, not only do you know who one of the rage zombies is, but there seems to be like some sort of reasoning like behind the eyes, like there's some sort of cognizance there. So, and I think that you in a sci-fi kind of headcanon way, you could be like, oh, that's the next iteration of the virus.
Yeah.
And the next stage, like it's evolved or whatever. But yeah, I think it's a solid, fun action movie. Got some cool gore and horror stuff, some cool action. Cast is good. I think obviously it's not as great as the first, but it gets unfairly maligned. And also after it came out, I mean, me and all my friends were so excited about a potential 28 months later. And we were waiting and waiting and waiting. And we had because at the end of 28 weeks, the virus gets to
Paris,
mainland, Europe. So we were like, oh my God, it's going to be set in Europe. It's going to be like this whole huge post-apocalyptic thing. Oh my God, it's going to be rage zombies everywhere, all over Europe. And for years we were getting things like, oh, Danny Boyle's interested. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they won't. Da-da-da. Years and years went by.
I think we're lucky that he waited for the right time and the right moment.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there were so many points where they probably could have just done, a Europe horror-like thing, and, it might have been good. But, in the last couple of years, they announced not only 28 years later, so obviously because it had been so much time, that they decided to skip a longer time. So not only they're doing that, but it's like they're like... Yeah, the idea, I guess, because of the time change had changed.
I think the benefit is you give yourself more creative freedom when you have such a distance between 28 weeks and 28 years. The imagination can take over. How much, what could have changed in years, like decades later? Like, how is society different? Yeah. How is the world reacting? All of that you're not limiting yourself.
And and instead of doing the obvious thing, they went in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why 28 years later, is a really interesting film, because they definitely could have done a lot of things, and they went a different way, and it's kind of
that's
awesome.
A one word for it, a different way.
So, I mean, Alex Garland, who I guess didn't like the idea of the virus getting to Paris, I guess they soft retconned that. So this one,
it
again...
was just, they got it under control.
Yeah, 28 years later, Danny Boyle comes back to direct, Alex Garland comes back to write.
Before we get right into 28 years later, we'll go to a very quick break, so we're not going to get interrupted later. And we'll be back with more right after these quick messages. You are back live on 98.9 Northwest FM. This is the Tuesday Review. Now going into 28 years later.
Yes, spoiler free for the first section, and then we'll announce spoilers later on, because there's a lot to talk about, and we want to get into the nitty gritty. Yeah, so 28 weeks later, at the end, the virus gets to Paris. Alex Garland, the writer of the first movie, and now 28 years, didn't really like that, and was kind of soft retconned it. Because at the start of the movie, they're like, there's like a little text that says that the virus was pushed out of continental Europe and back, and now that it's all back in the UK, and the UK has been completely quarantined from the rest of the world. So while over this 28 years the rest of the world has gone on normal, the UK has devolved into being overrun by the rage virus, which has evolved, and the strain, there's a new strain or whatever, where the infected have learned to hunt, and so they can sort of survive longer than they show at the end of the first movie, and now there are new iterations of the infected.
We got the slows.
Yeah, slow lows.
Slow lows.
who are, like, I guess have evolved to just like crawl slowly over the ground, eat worms and insects.
I mean, and they're also fat, which is like it's good for the virus, right? It's keeping the host alive. And
I guess so, yeah.
And they're the most, arguably the most successful in a way.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
they're
just
living longer.
just to survive, yeah.
And you got the alphas, which I guess technically are the most successful.
Yeah, and then you got the normal, I guess, I don't know if they call them runners in the movie.
The fast, I think they call them fast ones.
Yeah.
Because it's been so long since like the originals that they have their own like local terminology.
Yeah, and they're the normal ones that you see like in the other movies. And then there's alphas who have been sort of, the virus has like beefed them up with like natural steroids. So they're these really big guys and they kind of, the infected have sort of grouped together into like hunting packs, with the alpha being the leader, and
he kind of directs them.
Yeah, and so they're not really intelligent or like you know,
they're super strong.
Yeah,
they have lots of endurance.
The alphas are more intelligent than the normal ones. But I mean, the infected overall still aren't like smart or anything.
Oh no!
But now they're a bit more organized, and they're a bit more sort of. They've been evolving for so long that now
they're kind of like Stone Age in a way.
Yeah, they're like early cavemen almost. You know, but still there's that rage where if they see anyone, they'll want to
attack.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the movie. I mean, I don't even know where to begin because there's so much to talk about.
It opens with a an early scene that's not set in present time.
Yeah.
Of a group of children watching Teletubbies, which is great.
So two things. One, as soon as the movie starts, like the first image is like an old TV playing Teletubbies. I turn to Callum and I'm like, "This is the best movie ever." Already,
it sets the vibe immediately.
Yeah, already. Yeah. I'm like, it's very period appropriate to when the outbreak happened in early 2000s. It's very British. And yeah, I was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But also, I just want to quickly mention before I forget, like, the first two movies were before COVID, and this movie obviously after COVID. So the world has seen not a rage virus, but has seen the sort of global implications.
I mean, some would argue that it made people into like a rage zombie.
And
cookers.
Danny Boyle, you know, in the press for like the original movie in 2002, he's talking about, you know, the inherent rage people have when, you know, road rage or whatever.
We've all worked retail.
Yeah, exactly. Which, you know, the virus doesn't change you; it just brings out like it turns up the rage you already have to the extreme, and that's kind of what happens at the end of the movie where Jim attacks, you know, the soldiers, and you're like, it's almost like he's infected. Now all these years later, and like I feel like, you know, with the internet and like rage bait and, you know, people getting doom scrolling and like addicted to not addicted to anger, but, you know, I feel like it's more
close enough.
Yeah. Plus you've got the COVID virus, which you know, we went through a global pandemic, and that was a whole thing that, you know, wasn't really, you know, was more of a science fiction when the first movie came out. Not only that, you also have, since Brexit, this 28 years.
So you got that sense of isolation.
Yeah, so it's like now we also have this, you know, the UK is being quarantined and isolated. And so it's like, you know, the movie's not really about these things, but it's interesting. You know, you've got the first two movies and now you've got this one that's like after all these, you know, social, political sort of, you know, medical sort of events in real life history. And so I think it just informs the overall, you know, the way you watch it and the way it was probably written and ultimately made. So I think that's really interesting. But yeah, so yeah, it starts with the, I guess like the first two movies, it starts with the virus outbreak. And you show a young boy, like, you know, and watching Teletubbies as the virus spreads and people are dying and stuff. And then it flashes 28 years later, and we go to there's people living on like a little island.
Would you call it like a hamlet? I don't know. What would you refer to it?
It's
like a little coastal village.
Yeah.
It's the actual village is called Lindisfarne.
Yeah. Which is like a small little island that's like connected to the mainland of England with like a little causeway that when the tide rises is covered by water, and when it goes down, you can walk across. So that kind of keeps them safe and isolated. And after 28 years, they've basically, living in this quarantine zone.
Living in a feudal society.
Yeah, they've got this like little medieval community going on. And the movie's about a 12-year-old boy, Spike, played by Alfie Williams, who's really good in the movie. I think this is his first anything, like his first big role or anything. He does a really great job. And he's taken out by his father, played by Aaron Taylor-Johnson.
Perfect man for the movie.
Yeah, he's good.
Some might say perfect man.
Continue. Jamie, I think is his character's name. Yeah, he's taken out for his like first hunt. Like it's like a rite of passage that once the boys or the kids in the village get to a certain age, it's like they're allowed to go out and go to the mainland and hunt the infected and eventually
forage for supplies.
Exactly, yeah.
Like
and meanwhile, his mother Isla is played by Jodie Comer, who's always great, and she's very sick, and so he obviously wants to get her help, but they're in a post-apocalyptic world and no one knows what's wrong with her, and so they're kind of at a loss there. But yeah, I mean, one thing, the trailers were amazing.
Yeah,
like I was just like so hyped.
Yeah, the thing, the main trailer had a song called Boots.
Yeah, it was a Rudyard Kipling poem.
Yeah,
that was like recited, like it was like a 1915 recording.
Yeah, and it's when you see that when it's used in the film, it's even more effective than the trailer. Yeah, it's amazing.
You know what's cool is that song wasn't that thing wasn't in the movie. They used it for the trailer, and then Danny Boyle was like, "That's cool. Let's move it. Let's use it in the movie." So shout out to whatever trailer editor or music supervisor or marketing guy.
Another great thing about this film is its use of imagery.
Yeah.
So as well as like it'll have like stuff from the village, but then it'll show you medieval people throwing bows.
That's the thing.
So
it's
cool.
like the start of like the soundtrack's crazy good.
Just the creative. I'm not going to say risks, but the creative kind of swings that they take in this movie in all directions.
Exactly. Like that's I think one of the reasons it is so cool is because it's just like.
It's like nothing else.
Yeah, it's like Danny Boyle, like what he did
in 28 Days Later.
With 28 Days Later in 2002, like he's innovating and he's being creative and he's not doing the expected thing.
Got a little fire in his belly. With this
the
movie.
whole, famously this whole movie 28 Years Later is shot on iPhones.
Yeah.
Whoop-de-doo, whatever. Like lots of movies are shot on iPhones. Now you can shoot 4K, whatever.
Yeah, but the way he uses I've got 10 iPhones.
Yeah, but the way he uses it is like, again, like the first movie, is like weird angles, lots of like creative.
I did even appreciate
movement.
what I interpreted to be some like almost visual callbacks. Potentially, you could argue.
I don't think necessarily it was like
on purpose. Yeah.
I mean, there was an element of just choosing the iPhone that is similar to choosing the DV camera in the original film. But yeah, there are some shots in 28 Years where it's like the fidelity drops, but I don't think that's a direct homage to the original.
That's a consequence.
It's just like, it's just like, all right, the lighting here, like the image started to crush and that's all they had. So yeah, I don't think that's, sort of direct homage other than the fact that it is an innovative use of modern technology to make a, mainstream horror movie. So yeah, not only does he do that, but yeah, the way he uses it really, and there's that rig that has gone viral with all the phones kind of surrounding
to do the bullet time
actors.
stuff.
Yeah, which is like this cheapo bullet time but instead of like slow mo going around, it's just like these weird cuts and this jitteriness.
It's funny because I assumed it was CG. I didn't put two and two together.
Yeah, so it's like he uses, the camera work is crazy, the editing is crazy, and like you said, there are moments where the village people are training with bows and arrows, and it'll just cut to an old black and white movie of archers, in medieval England. And yeah, it's just, we've got the soundtrack and the boots and like this whole like,
there's an energy in the film where it just barrels along.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't do what you expect, you're engaged the entire time you're watching it. Not one moment goes past where you're not locked in.
Like,
just because it moves so quickly and it's so visually interesting.
It's interesting, yeah. Like, it's not like most other movies. And I actually saw, I loved it so much I went and saw it again at the movies. Like, I saw it twice. And I said in my second Letterboxd review that, like, Danny Boyle is, I think, 68 years old. And his movies have always been energetic and like they have this driving, force, and like, but kind of like George Miller with Mad Max, like, who's in his 70s, or I think he's 80 now. Like, it's like these older guys.
Look at Scorsese.
Who, no, but these guys specifically in this instance, because hey, they have this youthful energy and this innovation and creativity and weirdness, and they're not afraid to be weird and bold. And there's not, maybe you have to be sort of comfortable and experienced enough to take some swings like that. But there are not a lot of other young filmmakers who have that energy anymore. And that's, again, probably, like we always discuss, because the movie industry has changed and no one's giving these young filmmakers the sort of same chances that they would have back in the day. But it is interesting to see like an older filmmaker who has like this really, really, really powerful energy.
And we can't understate, without going into spoilers, just how strange and imaginative the movie actually is.
Yeah. So I mean, the first half is like, sort of.
I think we're quite a fantasy adventure almost.
Yeah, but like the first half is like somewhat of a logical. Yeah, but it's a logical progression of 28 years after the first movie. What would happen? And it's like, it's got this Last of Us kind of thing, and this post-apocalyptic, they've gone back to using bow and arrows, and they have this small sort of society, no electricity, whatever. And it's like, but it makes sense based on the first movie and based on other post-apocalyptic media we've consumed. But then as the movie goes on, it gets weirder and weirder. And I ended up thinking, I'm like, it's more like Furiosa, which is another movie I loved, and another movie that I went back and saw twice, like, because I was just like, so, like, this is crazy, like a mainstream movie that's just taking big swings, and I love it, and it's weird, and it maybe doesn't always work, but it's awesome. And you don't see that a lot in most movies, mainstream movies anymore.
Another thing I like about it is it's also unabashedly simple in the sense that it's like a standard call to adventure film.
Yeah.
Where it's like the young hero has to leave his town to help his mother.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker has to leave his home to join the Resistance.
Yeah. But I think.
But you know what I mean? Like, that's so it has a really strong premise that immediately grounds it.
I think Alex Garland is at his best when he's
a storyteller.
Simple.
Yeah.
Like, because I think most of his, like from 28 Days Later to, the Dread movie, to Sunshine or and to this, like he has simple plots.
Yeah.
And especially when he's collaborating with Danny Boyle, like that's the dream team. Garland and Boyle together, it's like, you're going to get something special. So I think it works, when you've got these two guys together and when you've got a simple plot.
When Danny Boyle can keep him in check.
Yeah, but you've got a simple plot, but you've got a filmmaker like Danny Boyle who's just so creative and it's like, I'm going to take this simple script and instead of just shooting it like everyone else would, how can we interpret this?
Yeah.
How as a filmmaker can I
visually translate it?
Take these words off the page and put this into a visual audio medium. So it's just incredible. Like,
it's an incredible collaboration because they understand each other so well. I think that they get the best out of each other. So like I'm not a huge fan of Alex Garland's solo work.
Well, yeah,
lately
we've discussed that over the years.
But like you said, when he teams up with Danny Boyle, it's like GOAT stuff.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, so I mean, there are parts that are really creative, in the first part of the film, and like we said, the editing and the cinematography and the music and whatever. But yeah, it is in the second half where it gets crazier, just in terms of the themes and the content of the movie and the visuals.
Yeah. Well, okay, it comes back to that. I was thinking about this a lot. It comes back to the storytelling device where you send the normal kid into the strange world where he knows nothing. Like it's the simple what is it, Campbell storytelling thing. But like the great thing journey. Is because the kid is malleable, he doesn't understand what the world's like. He goes into the weirdness.
Well, yeah,
which is like the second part is like when he explores further into his world than his father wants him to explore.
Yeah.
It's like the unchecked strangeness that his father can't pull him back from.
It becomes this weird, dark twisted fantasy, like coming of age.
Almost the Heart of Darkness element too. Yeah. Like the further he gets away from the town, the stranger shit gets.
Yeah, and basically it ends like I've seen a lot of because this movie is quite divisive because it does take a lot of swings and it is very different from the first two movies.
Skill
but,
issue.
Yeah. But I mean, I think a lot of people are not sort of, I don't know what the word is, but they're not sort of getting the fact that it's like, this is sort of like a fable or a fairy tale.
Yes.
Kind of like how Furiosa was, where it's just like, this is about a kid who goes on an adventure and learns about life and death.
Yeah.
And like learns about the different types of death in a world where he's surrounded by death, like in this post-apocalyptic world. And also, interestingly, in a world where his home and his home country is the only place where this is kind of happening, and the whole rest of the world is normal.
Yeah.
It's like what's happening, like, and in a way, kind of like with the Brexit stuff, and the movie doesn't delve into this, but you can extrapolate, you can, put your interpretation on it as like, well, this is kind of what we do in real life anyway, where it's like there's horrible stuff happening in other countries, but we just kind of ignore it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
There's not a lot we can do, so it's like let's just
make cordon off the island. Make sure no one leaves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In terms of the divisive nature of this film, the one thing I'll say is, if you're expecting a movie like 28 Days Later, I understand why you'd be disappointed. Only because my only problem with this film is that it was not scary enough for me personally. Because I feel like this isn't a horror film as such as it is more of a thriller action movie.
I think if the first movie is a horror, the second movie is action, this movie is like adventure, thriller, like But see, the start has horror elements.
Yeah.
The opening scene,
it does.
The scene in the house with the tied up, infected.
Yeah.
Like
I'm not saying it's not like there are elements.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's like an adventure thriller.
It's not grounded like the first ones, maybe.
But again, if it was scarier, I wouldn't be saying it. It doesn't matter how loosey-goosey the rest of the film is. If it was scary the whole way through, like even the villain in the film isn't particularly scary because it's not... Because the virus has evolved to such a state where they're essentially cave people, it lacks that... For me, it lacks that that brutality because they're no longer wearing officer suits. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing with the 28 years later, the
that's the conceit of the film is and I think that it loses something in that translation because I think the nature of the franchise has now shifted to such a degree where I can understand why you'd be disappointed.
Yeah, but also it makes sense because they could have done the easy thing of just like retreading the first two movies or setting it closer to the first two movies so you can still have some sort of similar zombie outbreak kind of thing. But it's like they've decided to push it and just be like, okay, now they've regressed to a medieval society and the zombies have evolved into something else entirely. And like this is now it's like a weird, dark, twisted fantasy world.
For me, especially considering how effective the trailer was in terms of the horror element, the tension it builds, this film just was not scary enough for me.
Yeah.
That's not saying it's for me, it's a 10 out of 10 film. But for the laurels that the franchise rests on, it just wasn't scary enough.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, I don't think it needed to be, especially what it's trying to do. And especially because it's, like it's evolved into a different thing. And also like watching the movie, I had no idea what was coming next. And I kind of like that and I like the bold swings it took. And I also find it interesting that whereas the first half has like the adventure and whatever, it's like the climax of the movie is actually just an emotional climax with the boy and his mother.
Yeah.
There's not really a big horror or action or
that might come in the next two.
Yeah.
Right?
And I guess here's the thing we didn't really talk about is that they've already shot the sequel to this movie. This 28 years later is not just this movie, it's part of a planned trilogy with the part 2, The Bone Temple, coming out early next year. So, and which they've already shot. So this is another problem with, quote unquote, problem with the movie, or that criticism I'm seeing, and that I agree with in a lot of ways, is that it ends on a massive cliffhanger, which you kind of have to see the next movie. So this movie, it's like half a movie in a way, because just as you it's almost like 2 acts. You got the first act and the second act, and then just as the third act is starting, cuts to credits.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the note it ends on is so insane and out of nowhere that I was just like, this is insane. Like, the movie was already getting crazy, but that bit was just so insane that I was just like, I was speechless. I was like, I don't know. I was baffled. I was like, wow.
Did you go with anyone to see it, or did you go by yourself?
The second time?
Yeah, the second time.
David, because he hadn't seen it.
What was David's reaction?
He really liked it too.
Towards the end scene?
Yeah, he's just like, what? And
did he understand references before you told him?
He didn't know, one, no, and two, he didn't know that the sequel was already coming out, which a lot of people didn't, which is, as soon as it finished, he's like, what? That's the end. I said, the second one's coming out soon. Like, there's already a second one. He's like, what? So I guess it's kind of like the thing with Across the Spider-Verse, where it ends on a massive cliffhanger and everyone's like, oh, and I'm like, but there was another one coming out. There's another one coming out.
Also, I'm reading on IMDb something I didn't know that was kind of relevant to what we're talking about. Teletubbies is the first thing shown in the movie, and at the end, a character's whistling the Teletubbies theme song, which is amazing.
And you hear in the soundtrack the 1, 2, 3, and where all the Teletubbies are introduced, and they're all color coordinated like the Teletubbies. It's a whole thing. I was like, what the hell? This is whole Power Rangers? Anyway, maybe we don't really have enough time.
No, we won't go to spoilers.
But yeah, I'll what was I saying about the movie just then?
The third act, the problem with the movie.
Cuts at the third act.
Yes. Yeah. So the thing is we've seen this a lot over the last 15 years, let's say, of movies being cut up unnecessarily. And, we've seen, especially in the last few years with Fast and Furious, Mission Impossible, Spider-Verse, of them ending on this big cliffhanger and being like, don't worry, there's a second part coming out. And then, Fast and Furious the next one's never getting made. Spider-Verse is coming out, I think, 2027 apparently. And Mission Impossible was the only one that finally got made, and that, was problematic. But in this case, they shot the first 2 already, which is, I think, how you should do it when you've got a planned trilogy like this. You shoot it all at once, and then you just cut it in half. So this is definitely half of the
film,
of the film. So I'm super excited for the second part, because it's just
we'll see.
I feel like on our Instagram, should we just post emojis with no context? Would that be fun?
I don't know. I mean,
look, in terms of the third film, considering that this film has almost made its money back just from its first weekend alone.
Yeah.
I think Danny Boyle's confident.
Yeah, so the first 2 have been shot. The second one's coming out early next year. The third one, I think, is written and ready to go, but they're just waiting for funding. So I think this...
I don't think it'll be a problem.
I think even with its divisive nature, I mean, I went to see it twice. Hopefully there are other people doing that. I think it's not breaking any records, but it's doing well enough.
Yeah.
That, and hopefully people will go out to see the second one.
50 mil's nothing for a big hob.
For the budget, yeah. And it's a good, like I said, it's a good, well-made movie. So hopefully the third one does come out, because, there's just so much crazy stuff here that they set up, and that
And we need it.
We need it. We didn't even have time to talk about Ray Fiennes' character, who is amazing.
That's best we don't even talk about him, to be honest.
Yeah,
he's better left as a surprise.
Yeah, true.
Let's not talk about him in a spoiler-free context.
Yeah,
the best endorsement I can give for this film, and as weird as it sounds, I was happy watching it the entire way through, just because, like James was saying, you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And it's effective the entire way through.
And when it happens, you're like, holy crap, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people, it's made some people mad, but, I'm like, I appreciate the boldness.
Out of all the interpretations of this kind of story that they could tell, they told the craziest, most unhinged, beautiful, a strangely beautiful one.
It's so weird. It's just like there are parts of this movie that are so crazy and insane, but also kind of touching and exactly. It's just Danny Boyle. Danny Boyle, like, is just such a great filmmaker, and his interpretation. And Alex Garland brought his
A game.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really looking forward to part 2, The Bone Temple. Can't come soon enough. I'm kind of similar with Furiosa. I was like, I'm obsessed with this kind of crazy, over the top, weird movie that
weirder the better.
Exactly, that you don't really see in cinema much anymore, and so I was just like, hell yeah, I hook it to my veins. I mean, we're running out of time, but quickly, I guess one criticism I've seen is that in the first 2 movies, it's like you get infected by blood or saliva of the infected, and this one they're a bit nonchalant about that when they should probably be a bit more concerned about getting blood on them, and they should maybe wear masks around their face or something. So I do agree with that. I was like, there are a couple of bits where I was like, they're not taking any precautions. On one way, you can say, it's been so long that they're kind of used to it now. But I'm like, no, it's just kind of a simple precaution to just put a scarf around your face so you don't get blood in your mouth or whatever. But it's like that's just such a nitpicky small thing. And a lot of the other things that people complain about, a lot of people are just boring because they're like, the editing's weird. I'm just like, you're a boring person, shut up. But also, it's like I said, it's this weird, dark fantasy fairy tale, like fable about this boy going on a journey and learning about death
and love.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, and who knows where the second movie will take him, because that ending, oh boy.
You thought there were elements of Heart of Darkness in the first one, and you wait till the Bone Temple.
I think I don't think it's gonna go Heart of Darkness. It's gonna go freaking It's gone full Mad Max.
Yeah,
not full Mad Max, but it's in that direction of like
it's Mad Max in a forest.
Yeah, he's like he's because we've only just seen the coast of England. He's going now further into England. He's going to start seeing the other towns that have survived.
It's going to be interesting to see back in cities and towns and villages.
Yeah, so I mean that's the thing is like what they set up at the end without spoiling. I was like, are they going to do like in Mad Max how there's like Bullet Town and Gas Town, and it's like what we see at the end, is there going to be town for those people? Is there going to be another town? Like, is there going to be different factions? Like, we see this sort of evidence of this cult, I will call them. So, it'll just be really interesting to see where they go and how they connect back to Cillian Murphy's character from the first movie, who apparently he's coming back in later movies. So, it's just, I'm so excited. I love this movie. It's my favorite of the year, probably, and...
Yeah. Thank you, Danny Boyle. Thank you, Alex Garland.
Yeah. I really hope the second movie's good. It's directed by Nia DaCosta, so Danny Boyle's heavily involved. She did the Candyman reboot, which I didn't see. And she did the Marvels, which was okay, but I trust Danny Boyle, in choosing her, and I'm sure he was heavily involved as is Alex Garland. So, but hopefully they do it justice. So
we're all out of time. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will be at Chaos SimCon this weekend. Come say hi if you attend. You can catch the podcast on wherever you listen.
Rate us 5 stars on your platform.
5 stars. We're on all the socials at Tuesday Review AU. Well, some of the socials these days. We're on mostly Instagram, Facebook, Newsmast, and Blue Sky at Tuesday Review AU. Our YouTube, again, at Tuesday Review AU. Our Substack,
Make sure you follow our YouTube because we'll have exclusive video content there.
Con content.
Yeah.
Substack is tuesdayview.substack.com. We're on Letterboxd. I'm Nathan_B_90.
I am channeldrifter.
And I'm Callum Tuesday.
And we'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening, everyone. Adios, cousins.